Hello, a Rosie math teacher coming at you from my 7th period, grade 7 math class. Today we are continuing to work on math fast exam review items. I am only helping them with 3 of today's items. The rest of them you're on your own. All right, item number 7. A meteorologist, that's a weather person, tracks the temperature each day. The changes in temperature during the recording period are shown. So notice, guys, they do give you a time period in the top row. What time does the time period begin with? 8 a.m. It goes 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Then it picks up where it left off, 10 a.m. to noon, and so on and so forth until the ending time, which is what? 4 p.m. That's important to pay attention to. At each of those times, the temperature changed by the amount in the second row. So in other words, whatever the temperature was at 8 a.m. that morning, by 2 hours later at 10 a.m., it had increased in temperature by 7 3/4 degrees. Do you follow what they mean? So I want you to pretend when you're answering this question, let's read the question part. The changes in temperature during the recording are shown. What is the total change in temperature from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m.? So if you're going from 8 a.m., isn't that at the very beginning of your information? And if you're going all the way until 4 p.m., isn't that at the end of your information? Yes. So you don't know how many degrees it was right before the clock struck 8. You don't know what it was before, but that's okay. All we need to know is the amount of change that occurred. So what's happening to the amount when it starts at 7 3/4 amount of change? Is it increasing or decreasing? Increasing. So in a moment, not right this second, you will literally enter on that white handheld calculator that is magic with fractions. You'll enter 7, ABC 3, ABC 4. Literally just begin with that amount. It is positive, and so that's why you'll type that exact amount as a positive integer. And then the next amount, what do you think you will type for the next amount? Oh, don't forget the sign. Plus 12 1/2. Then what do you think you will type for the next amount? Minus 3 3/4. As the temperature increased, we would keep adding. As the temperature begins to decrease, we will what those amounts? We will decrease, so we will put a subtraction symbol. So minus 3 3/4, and it decreases again by 9 1/4. Since it decreases by 9 1/4, you would enter minus 9 1/4. You would tap the equal sign. Your magic calculator will give you the fraction in simplest form. You'll pick that answer in a moment. Let's talk about number 8. Fill in the bubbles to indicate whether each situation represents a proportional relationship. Guys, I want you to think again about what we learned that would make something a proportional relationship. Do you remember how if something shows a proportional relationship, it means you are only using one specific amount that gets repeated over and over and over again? For example, if we said it costs $5 per 1 hour to do something, do you agree this is a unit rate? This is a proportional relationship of the number of dollars that it will cost you for 1 hour of whatever the activity is. But let me remind you, if you were to add a one-time amount before you start paying an hourly fee, that would be a not proportional relationship. Watch. If, for example, you were allowed to attend some sort of special event for $5 per hour that you chose to stay, if they gave you a parking fee in the parking lot, then that would be a one-time amount that you also have to pay. Let's say they charged you $10 for parking. Do you agree that's a one-time amount? And do you agree you will still have to pay your hourly fee of plus $5 per hour or 5x to equal Y, the amount your evening would cost if you chose to go to that event? As soon as you have a one-time amount, it means it is no longer proportional. Now, not only can you tell by an equation, you can also tell if you were to try to put it on a graph. If you try to put on a graph that you were charged $5 per hour, if you had 0 hours worked, would you get $0 or would you have to pay $0? If you were charged per hour for something, how many hours would you have worked for $0? 0 hours, right? Do you associate 0, 0 with no hours worked and no money spent or made, right? So that would start at, what do we lovingly call this? POO, point of origin. And because you're using a unit rate throughout your graph, it would go in a straight line. Remember, 2 things let you know that it is proportional. If it begins at point of origin and continues in a straight line, we say, yes, it is what? Proportional. So do you see how $5 per 1 hour would end up being like this on a grid? Proportional. But what if you were doing the one-time parking fee before you started paying the $5 per hour for whatever the event was? Remember, then you would start at what on the y-axis? At $10. You wouldn't start at 0. You would pay just for showing up, a one-time amount. And then your amount you graph would go up from there. Would that be an example of yes, proportional, or no, not proportional? Which one? No, not proportional. Why? It's a straight line, guys, but it doesn't go through POO, point of origin. So I hope that helps you when you think about examples over here. Only choose as proportional something that has an amount that gets repeated over and over and does not include a one-time amount or a one-time fee. All right, the last item we're talking about is item number 10. The circle graph shows how a small business is planning to use their advertising budget this month. If the company has $12,000 to spend, how much more money in dollars, is spent on online advertising compared to print advertising? So on your circle graph, they are comparing online advertising, which is what percent? 34%, to print advertising, which is what percent? 25%. So first make sure you are choosing the right percentages. And then secondly, ask yourself this: what am I going to do with the percent and the total amount that they are allowed to spend? If they're allowed to spend for the online advertising 34% of 12,000, class, how do you find 34% of 12,000? What can you write as a fraction to represent 34%? 34 over 100. And what symbol in the world of math means of? Times. I like your answers. And what was the total amount of money that you want 34 hundredths of? 12,000. So in a moment, in your online calculator, I recommend you put all of this in parentheses. And then you say, before you begin to represent your print, in fact, let's go ahead and represent the print right now. So if we represent the print, which is 25%, what will that fraction say? 25 over what? 100. And then what comes next? Times. And what amount? 12,000. Great job. Now, because the question says, how much more money in dollars, what operation will I put on the calculator after 34 hundredths times 12,000 before 25 hundredths times 12,000? What sign? Subtract. Excellent. Whenever you're finding how many more, you subtract. Guys, back when I taught kindergarten, there were two little boys sitting next to each other eating their milk and drinking their cookie. And one little boy raised his hand and he said, "Mrs. Rose, he has 4 more M&Ms in his cookie than I have in my cookie." Well, what did he do with the numbers if the other boy had 14 and he had 10? What did he do with those numbers to find out that he had 4, the other guy had 4 more? Subtract. When somebody has more than you, you remember what to do with your numbers. So ask yourself, what would you do? You would subtract. All right, that is it for today. I hope this helps.